I call the Honourable Member Sua William Sio Talofalava.
Talofalava, Mr. Speaker. As the former Speaker just sits, I just want to say to you, Mr. Speaker, and to members of this House, that there was no shred of truth in her attacks on my colleagues, and I would challenge her. I would challenge her to show any evidence, any example that my colleague, Dr. Rajan Prasad, as a former Families Commissioner, was campaigning during the period that he was a Commissioner. That's not what we saw in a member of the Families Commission. We actually saw a picture of that member standing next to the Prime Minister with a national blue rosette. And sir, she should step down from the role that she currently holds and become political. Get involved in the politics, that's what she wants, but don't beguile the community by wearing rosette and at the same time holding the position of Families Commissioner. So the Child Poverty Action Group, in their submission on this bill, said that in the history of New Zealand there has really been a greater need for an autonomous Crown entity whose role it is to advocate for the interests of families. And so I agree with that submission. That need is greatest today, right now. And they go on in their submission to list a range of things that are happening within families in our communities, the length and breadth of New Zealand. They list a number of people who are self-harming, list a number of people who have committed suicide, family violence, and family violence-related crimes, police apprehensions, women's refuge. And in their submissions, sir, they highlight that these things over time have been rising. And in fact, sir, it is one of the reasons why the Families Commissioner was formed in the first place, to try and attempt to address these issues, because if they are happening to one family, they impact the rest of our communities. Today, sir, the need is greatest, never ever before, for an organisation to be championing and advocating the needs of families. And I say that even more, that the need is even greater today, sir, because New Zealand families are under constant attack, not necessarily from violence and the related suicide and all of that bad stuff, but they're under constant attack now, sir, by poverty. Poverty that has been rising in the last almost 6 years. Inequality is rising rapidly. At least one child in 5 lives in severe and significant poverty. If 185,000 children are living in severe and significant poverty, each of those families are all doing it tough right now, today. Unemployment continues to remain high at 6.8%, with all the hardship that means for our families. In the Pacific and Māori communities, sir, it's even worse. They are in particular hardest hit today, despite the economic recovery that we hear from this government. Pacific unemployment is at 13.7 today, almost double what it was in 2008. Pacific youth aged 15 to 24 years, not in education, employment or training, stands at 21% today. Pacific median income, weekly income for Pacific, fell from 455 in 2008 to 381 in 2013, while income for the rest of New Zealand rose by $51 a week in the same period. The Salvation Army reported that in 2012 they gave away almost 5,000 more food parcels to Pacifica clients as compared with the food parcels they gave in 2008. All of this signals the plight and the struggles that families are undergoing throughout New Zealand, and it has been getting worse under this government, sir, and there is a need for an advocate, a Crown entity that is able to champion and advocate on behalf of all of these New Zealand families. But alas, sir, in this particular bill, all we're getting is tinkering on the edges, is the removal of the independence of this particular Families Commission. This is really critical. The removal of the independence from the Families Commission means they become almost as if they were a puppet for this government. And an example, where this government, where once upon a time the Families Commission were the champions and strong advocate for paid parental leave, the minute that this government decided that that was not on, that they did not support that, what did we find later on? The same Families Commissioner organisation that supported paid parental leave then began to toe the party line as advocated by this particular government. So, sir, this bill removes the independence and the freedom of the Families Commission to be able to advocate strongly and to think for themselves about how to address the hardships and the difficulties that families are facing today. And so, in addition to the removal of the independence, the Families Commissioner, under their legislation, means that they lose their autonomy and they lose their ability to think freely and to advocate for those things which would support families up and down New Zealand. Under this bill, there is establishment of a social services experts panel. Sir, I don't know what is the aim of this expert panel, but I recall, sir, under a Labour, it was the Ministry of Social Development on an annual basis that released a State of the Nation report on the situation for families in New Zealand, and thereby releasing that report, all other government agencies would act upon to try and rectify and provide the badly needed support that families required, like employment, like income, like support for early childhood education. The removal of the ability of Ministry of Social Development to be able to release that annual report, and by giving it to this special expert panel, sir, just simply means that, again, a removal of the ability of the requirement for this government to act and support our families who are in need. Sir, National has gutted the independence of the Families Commissioner, and it is, far as Labour is concerned, it is best now to de-establish it altogether. Labour will, in its stead, subsume the Families Commission, original and independent role and their functions into what we will call the Children's Commission. I said earlier, sir, that there are 185,000 children who are classed by many, many reports as being in significant and severe poverty. They are not poor by themselves. They belong to families. And all of those families are struggling to put food on the table. And they've been struggling even more since the coming into power of this particular government, sir. By doing what this government is doing to the Families Commission, they are actually washing their hands from their responsibility to support families in New Zealand. When Labour comes in power in September the 23rd, we will establish a Children's Commissioner. We will make sure that the Children's Commissioner have their independent voice and are able to act autonomously to support the need of those children. Because when we're able to do that, sir, when we're able to support families and their children, we're also supporting, in the long run, the welfare of this particular country. That's where our interests are, sir, and I doubt very, very much, based on this piece of legislation, that that government has any consideration for the rest of New Zealand other than the kinds of people that we have seen in the previous several weeks, of the kinds of people that they support. They are only supporting their people, sir, their families, which is a few, and I say, sir, that New Zealanders listening so far into the debate that have occurred are not stupid. They would have recognised once and for all that this is an arrogant government, sir, who are only looking after themselves and their mates and they don't care one iota about the rest of New Zealand families who are struggling and doing it tough.
Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member